Whoa, 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 whoa. Welcome to the Attic Mana Dad here. It's the channel where we explore what's fun in Magic, mostly on Arena, but also in paper or on Magic the Gathering Online, wherever you're going to play the new Aetherdrift set in Limited. That is where this video will be good. This is the removal section of my Limited strategy breakdown. As I go through the Aetherdrift set, I'm breaking things down into bits like removal, combat tricks, etc. You get to be here as I record the bits and pieces for the larger video here. Get all my coughs out of the way. And this segment is the segment where we're talking about removal, which is going to be kind of tricky in this set, but we'll get into that. So let me get... Oh, man. All right. Hopefully not going to be coughing through this whole thing. Still getting over a cold. It's never a good time to record, because there's constantly new Magic sets coming up. All right. In 5, 4, 3... Okay, removal in Aetherdrift. We're going to break down in terms of the toughness and what is available in each color in this segment right here, starting with the toughness breaks. And that's what I call, if you think about red removal, something that deals 1 damage, how many creatures is that going to eliminate? And it deals 2 damage, 3 damage, 4 damage, 5 damage, 6 damage, 7 damage. There is more to removal in this set, especially than just that, as we're going to see. But this will give us a nice overview. And what we can see here is at 1 toughness, we've got 29 creatures. There are also 1/1 Thopters and Pilots. So 1 toughness is actually going to hit more maybe than you expect. There's just 1 vehicle that has 1 toughness. There's a red vehicle that is a 3/1. Otherwise, vehicles are generally bigger toughness. You can see as we go up the scale, 27 creatures at 2 toughness, 7 vehicles at 2 toughness, 3 toughness, 30 creatures, 12 vehicles, 4 toughness, 28, 6. Excuse me. So you can see how it kind of escalates. It's fairly even in terms of the amount of creatures that removal is going to hit. You got 29, 27, 30, 28 until you get to that 4, that break at 4. And then it's just 11, 3, and 4. And obviously, as you go up higher, you're going to hit more higher rarities. For this set, I just broke down in terms of creatures. I didn't remove the rares and mythic rares. We also have some creatures like Kaelorna over there that are super tough for very cheap with this cycle, this mythic cycle. They either have super high power or super high toughness. The mythic vanilla, or not mythic vanilla, the legendary vanilla cycle at uncommon. So that is the breakdown of how everything breaks down. We'll talk specifically about the actual cards. So red is a great place to start, obviously. For 1 mana, you can get Road Rage, which deals X damage to target creature or planeswalker, where X is 2, plus the number of mounts and vehicles you control. So it's a 1 mana, deal 2 at least, and probably often 3 or 4. Red has no problem getting mounts and vehicles. There's also a little guy, a 1/1 Dynamite Diver, that when it dies, it deals a damage. So keep that in mind, I guess, for your X1s and how you value them in the draft. But the main thing is Lightning Strike. Lightning Strike deals 3 damage to any target. That's going to be almost definitely a top red common and probably a top common for the set in my prediction. And 3 damage is going to kill 65% of creatures. Now, not including vehicles in that. But 65% of creatures are going to be killed by Lightning Strike for just 2 mana at instant speed. You also have to take into account that a crap ton of this set is artifacts, including all the vehicles and some of the creatures. So Sky Crash, instant speed, destroy target artifact. With cycling in the event that you're playing against a deck that's not running any artifacts for some reason, you can cycle it for just 1 red mana. Sky Crash is looking pretty good to me as a removal spell. It's looking very main deckable. Field of Flames. This is red's small board wipe here. 3 mana, 2 damage to each creature. I'm not sure what decks are going to want this. It seems like the red decks are pretty heavy on the small creatures. We've got stuff like Gastel Blockbuster right below that, a 3/2. When it enters, you can sacrifice a creature or vehicle, and if you do, destroy an artifact an opponent controls. So it could be a staple on removal right there with that. And but you have a lot of creatures like that, even at 3 or 4 mana, that are gonna die to your own Field of Flame. So you have to be careful using that. There might be some ways to do a combat attack. They block, they think they gotcha, and then you Field the Flames. Outpace Oblivion is a 3 mana enchantment. When it enters, deals 5 damage to up to 1 target creature or planeswalker. 5 damage is going to kill 94% of creatures in the format. So if you think about that, with the, and also in blue red, you can do 5 damage with Broadside Barrage. Those are killing almost everything, just the really big weird stuff, the Kylornas and the rares and mythic rares that have the high toughness, super high toughness. There's a 6/6 in green that's not going to get hit by that. But for 3 mana, you can hit almost anything. And of course, Outpace Oblivion is at sorcery speed. Broadside Barrage can be instant speed. Crash and Burn, that's going to kill 97% of creatures in the format. Of course, it just outright kills any vehicle for 4 mana. So I'm liking Crash and Burn. I think that at common, you're going to be able to see this a lot. You're going to be able to pick it up, and every red deck will probably be happy with at least one of it, and we'll have to see how it plays out in the format. You might be happy to stack 3 or 4 into a deck, depending on how much removal and how good removal is in the format. My guess, my prediction is that removal will be quite good. We can talk about that as we look at white here. Because with vehicles, if they have, the vehicles are big generally and have good abilities. If they can't crew them, so if they have no creatures to crew them, they're dead cards. And if the vehicle is removed, then the creatures that crew are often not that great. So by having that ability to remove either the creatures or the vehicles, depending on the situation, you can kind of shut out your opponent, shut down their plan. I think it's going to be a pretty strong strategy. All right, let's take a look at what white has in terms of removal. We have Collision Course at 2 mana, deals X damage to target creature, where X is the number of permanents or vehicles you control that are creatures and or vehicles. So kind of your standard white, deal damage equal to the number of creatures, except this time it counts vehicles, except this time it's a sorcery. Seems not great, but it does also have the other mode that just outright destroys an artifact. And as I said, artifacts are very prevalent in the set. 62% of the set, in fact, is artifacts. So be that vehicles, creatures that are just artifact creatures, other artifacts that do things. 62% of the set is artifacts. So right off the bat, without even looking at the other mode, it is removing 62%. And I think that's probably why they made it sorcery speed instead of this effect is often instant speed. Something to keep in mind. On the other hand, you can get Gallant Strike, which is going to kill 35% of non-vehicle creatures and 51% of vehicles in the format. It also has the advantage of killing the best stuff. Destroys target creature with toughness 4 or greater. That's usually that better stuff. And can also cycle. So it has an out. Ride's End is really a 2 mana instant to exile a creature or vehicle that is tapped, but you can also do it for 5. These effects have generally been good lately. It's medium to good. We've got at rare, I just threw these in so you can be aware of them. Don't usually talk about rares in this section, but because I was being thorough, we've got Spectacular Pile Up, which is the board wipe, 5 mana to destroy all creatures and vehicles. And then Perilous Snare, this is 3 mana. When it enters, exile target non-land permanent opponent controls until it leaves the battlefield. Now, again, so much artifact removal and probably going to be main decked. So I don't know about Perilous Snare, but it's something to keep in mind. If you're drafting and you drafted early, you can have a piece of white removal that also does max speed things. In blue, not necessarily a color we think of as removal. There are some counter spells that I didn't put up here in blue, but we have a lot of ways to interact in a blue way. First of all, bounce off. This is looking like one of the best commons to me. Return target creature or vehicle to its owner's hand. So it's an unsummon that also hits vehicles. Stall out is tap target creature or vehicle, then put 3 stun counters on it, and it cycles. I think if this format is as fast as I'm expecting, a tempo play like this where you're just locking something down for 3 turns and keeping it from being a blocker could be pretty decent. Flood the Engine is, I guess, less, just lock it down permanently. It's a 3 mana enchant a creature or vehicle. When it enters, tap the permanent, and enchant permanent loses all abilities and doesn't untap during its controller's untap step. Roadside Blowout. I really like this card. It is sorcery speed, which is tricky, but costs 2 less to cast if it targets a permanent with mana value 1, which is interesting. So you don't get the cheap thing if you're using it to remove tokens. But I think you're probably generally happy to pay 3 mana, bounce a thing, which is a creature or vehicle that an opponent controls, and then draw a card. Again, if this is a tempo set, being able to bounce blockers and get in and just slow down the game, or I guess slow down your opponent's game while you are getting in with your big 7/2 vanilla, whatever, it can be pretty good. 4 mana, trip up. This is the, I guess, put a thing on top of the library effect. It also has cycling. It's instant speed, so you can use it as a combat trick. I think it's going to be decent trip up. We've got Roadside Barrage. We talked about that. If you happen to be in red, you can have access to some damage. And also a draw discard stapled onto there, which is relevant in the red-blue decks. Trade the Helm is a sorcery that lets you exchange control of target artifact or creature, and target artifact or creature an opponent controls. So this is interesting. Let's say you have a 1/1 Thopter token and you want to change it out for their big mythic. That can be done for 5 mana. I think in general these are pretty clunky. The fact that this cycles is interesting. I don't know. I don't know how Trade the Helm is going to play. It's maybe I'll know by the time I've analyzed the set a bit more, but it is sort of a removal spell slash just a chaos spell. On the other hand, Spike Shell Harrier is a 4/4 robot turtle. This is the Mario Kart blue shell as a creature. When it enters, you get to bounce a creature or vehicle an opponent controls, and then if that opponent's speed is greater than each other player's speed, their speed gets reduced by 1. So you can slow them down slightly if they're a max speed opponent, but the main thing is it's a 4/4 that bounces. So we know Marshall is going to be very happy with this card. 5 mana at rare, just to keep in mind, is sort of the control magic of the set. When this vehicle enters, gain control of target creature and opponent controls for as long as you control this vehicle, and that creature can't attack or block for as long as you control this vehicle. Just kind of ices something out, but you do end up getting a crew 3 5/5. I'm not sure how good that's going to be. Crew 3 is generally not great. On the other hand, icing opponent's thing and having a big vehicle left behind doesn't sound bad. But that's at rare, so we won't worry too much about that one. Let's look at black. Black is one of the traditional removal colors, and this set is no exception. We've got a -1 effect at instant speed with Locust Spray. We already talked about how, about 21% of the creatures in the format, not including tokens, get hit by this. But when you start including tokens, I think that'll raise it in value. There's a good chance this is main deck every time card, especially because of the cycling cost being so low. And then Grim Bobble, this is better, I think, because it's going to hit 42% of non-token creatures in the format with the -2/-2. And then it sticks around, and you can get that value with the Surveil. So I'm really high on Grim Bobble. I'm making it one of my top black commons. We'll see if that bears out. But for 1 black mana, being able to hit 42% of non-token creatures in the format, that sounds good to me. You also get a non-restrictive removal here with Hellish Sideswipe. You just have to be willing to sacrifice a creature or vehicle. And if it was a vehicle, you get to draw a card. So that's going to be really interesting to see this kind of sorcery speed um, effect. It's not exile, but it is destroy. And exile will be more relevant in this format because there is a decent amount of graveyard shenanigans going on. For 2 mana, Momentum Breaker, it's sacrifice effect enters. Each opponent sacrifices a creature or vehicle, and if they can't, they have to discard, so that's good. And then you can sacrifice it to gain life equal to your speed. I think these are good in multiples, but it is an uncommon, so how many multiples are you going to get? How much do you care about starting your engine? Momentum Breaker is tricky to evaluate, but right now I'm not putting it super high, but maybe there are some decks that are going to want it. Also, 2 mana, there's a rare that is sorcery speed. Choose target creature, planeswalker, or vehicle. Mill 2, then destroy the chosen permanent if its mana value is less than or equal to the number of cards in your graveyard. So the scales with the game. It's kind of weird, but you might want the mill in certain decks. We won't belabor it too much because it is a rare. What you are guaranteed to see a decent amount of is Spin Out, which is murder for the set. It's instant speed, destroy target creature or vehicle. The question is, because it's instant speed, you can wait until they crew the vehicle, so then it's a creature anyway. So is the vehicle part of it just kind of trinket text? Is it sort of just going to perform like murder? It does have the double black, which is interesting. The set has decent fixing, but you're not guaranteed to be able to cast this on turn 3. What else can I tell you about Spin Out? I think there are a lot of other ways to destroy creatures and vehicles for less mana, but I don't know. The question is, unrestricted, destroy any creature, instant speed. How good is that going to be? I think it's going to be decent, and it is common. So then the question becomes, okay, well, if this is common and every black deck will probably have at least one if they can help it, then how good are creatures really going to be in this set? That's the question. It is 2025 Magic. Every good creature comes with an ETB. For example, the Sheffet Archfiend. It's a 5/5 flyer. When it enters, all other creatures get -2/-2 until end of turn. So that's your black version of the board wipe. Again, we're talking about non-token creatures. That's 42% of non-token creatures getting wiped, including your own, potentially. I think black is potentially going to be running quite a few small creatures. Although there is a 1/3 flyer for 2 mana, so that would avoid dying to the Sheffet Archfiend. Archfiend also cycles, so it can be reanimated. But we'll talk about that in the other format. Let's go to the Siphon Fuel, our last bit of removal here. Target creature gets -6/-6 until end of turn, and you gain 2 life. It's instant speed. It's 5 mana. Seems like it is very playable. Remove a creature, gain 2 life is good stabilization. I think I didn't even bother to calculate it because 94% of creatures are getting killed by something that hits 5 toughness. So 6 toughness, I think, is 97%. I didn't write it down, but Siphon Fuel is going to remove almost anything. The question is, for 5 mana, how much do you really want to remove? It's going to line up poorly tempo-wise, is what I'm saying. Green, this is our final color to talk about here. Green removal suite. Well, the green removal suite in general. You got the fight spell, but it also destroys target vehicle, so that's nice. It's a 1 mana sorcery. Then you have the more premium, and that's an uncommon. This is a common. Run Over. Costs 1 less to cast if it targets a mount or vehicle you control. So if you're using a mount or vehicle with it, it can even be 1 mana instant speed. And it is a punch or a bite, I guess. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature an opponent controls. So that looks like to be one of the better commons. Now, the question is Broken Wings. We've seen this a million times in a million sets. Usually it's a sideboard only card. Sometimes it's main deckable on the fringes. I think, and this is me going out on a limb here, this destroys 65% of non-land permanents in the format. This destroys well over half. the non-land permanents in the whole format. With that in mind, because so many things are artifacts already, plus you're getting enchantments and creatures with flying, it is 3 mana, but it's also instant speed. I think Broken Wings is going to be a possibly top common and most definitely main deckable. That's what I'm going out on a limb with that, but we'll see how it shakes out in the format. If removal is as good as I'm thinking, then Broken Wings should be probably as good as it's ever been. That's my predictions for removal, and stick around and we'll find out about combat tricks.